Let's trace our medieval and classical age and then journey through until we reach where we are today. This is 500 BC to about 1400 AD. Now, up until now, stories were mostly about explaining the world. Early humans told stories to answer questions like, where did we come from? Why does the sun rise? Why do storms happen? Why do people die? But now, something changes. In this stage of storytelling, humans don't stop asking what the world is, they just start asking who we are inside of it. This is where stories shift from explaining the world to exploring the human soul. So here we have a few things emerge. Things such as Greek tragedy and comedy. The Greeks used stories to explore human flaws: pride, jealousy, fear, love, betrayal. The tragedies asked, what happens when humans push too far? The comedies asked, what happens when humans are foolish? These stories weren't just entertainment. They were warnings, lessons, and mirrors. We also had philosophical stories. Think of stories that are really just asking big questions. What is truth? What is justice? What is a good life? These stories don't give easy answers. They make you think. Then we had the Hebrew parables and prophetic narratives. These stories are deeply moral and spiritual. They use short stories, symbolism, and prophecy to teach about faith, obedience, consequences, and hope. They aren't about gods fighting monsters, they're about humans wrestling with God, purpose, and responsibility. Christian storytelling traditions was another. These Christian stories carry themes of sacrifice, redemption, forgiveness, light overcoming darkness, and love changing the world. These stories shaped medieval Europe and influenced art, literature, and moral storytelling for centuries. We had the Norse sagas. These are darker, harsher stories. They focus on fate, honor, bravery, and facing the end with courage. Now, the heroes don't always win, but they do face death with dignity. Then we had Celtic lore. The Celtic stories are filled with nature, magic, other worlds, and thin veils between realms. They focused on mystery, cycles, seasons, and the idea that the unseen world is always nearby. We had Middle Eastern folktales, such as the Arabian Nights. Now, these were layered stories, stories inside of stories. They focused on cleverness, survival, wisdom, and storytelling itself as a tool for life. And of course, we had medieval epics, stories like King Arthur, Beowulf, and Dante's Divine Comedy. These are long, serious stories about heroism, faith, loyalty, temptation, and moral testing. We had knights, quests, monsters, moral trials. This is where the idea of the hero's journey becomes very clear. We'll get more into what the hero's journey means in a few weeks. So, the big idea of stage 4 of our timeline is that stories are no longer just explaining the world, they're helping humans understand themselves. So, from then to today, we're going to move forward now to stage 5, modern storytelling. This is about 1400 AD to today. The technology changes, but the purpose does not. We have the printing press. Books become cheaper and easier to make. Stories are no longer only for monks, nobles, or scholars. Stories become for the people. We're in the industrial age, where new genres appear, such as mystery, horror, fantasy, science fiction. Stories that explore fear, imagination, progress, and the unknown. And of course, we have film. Stories become visual. Movies turn ancient myths into moving images. Film is just modern mythology. And then, of course, the internet. Stories travel instantly across the world. Anyone can tell a story. The borders disappear. But here's the most important part: the core hasn't changed. We still tell stories for the same reasons early humans did: to understand life, to make sense of fear, to pass on meaning, to remember who we are. So, in week 4, with modern storytelling, we go from novels, film, and digital as not a replacement of ancient storytelling, but a continuation. From written myths, scrolls, manuscripts, printing press, fairy tales, to novels, movies, animation, television, video games, and social media. Same rhythm, new tools. So some of these are now, such as first novels. These were long form storytelling, and it becomes really popular now. This is where characters develop deeply over time. We have poetry in the Romantic era. This was emotion, nature, imagination, and individuality really mattering. The feeling becomes the central focus. We have newspapers and magazines, stories that become timely. They document real life, not just legends. Film as storytelling. Movies function like ancient myths, heroes, villains, trials, and transformations. Animation and television were stories that reach children and families every day. The myths become colorful, musical, and emotional. And of course, modern digital storytelling, such as TikTok, YouTube, fan fiction, video games. People don't just consume stories, they get to participate in them now. Now, the hero's journey today shows up in Marvel, Star Wars, Disney, the same ancient structure, the call to adventure, trials, failure, transformations, and return. You know, the knight on his quest to go save a desperate princess. But hey, nothing's new. Everything is just retelling the same archetypes. And if you don't know what an archetype is, that is again something that we're going to get into here in the next few weeks. One thing we do know of is the geography lens we talked about. Stories have always traveled. Now, before, they had trade routes and empires and spreading stories with the printing press that democratized stories. But now we have the internet erasing our borders. The stories remix old myths and just new cultures, languages, and styles. One culture's ancient story becomes another culture's modern movie. So today, I would love for you guys to do an activity called Design a Title Page. This is where you get to make your mock medieval manuscript title page, either for your story that you're currently working on at home or something that you make up on the spot. Think decorated letters, symbols, borders, meaning. It's fast, artistic, and meaningful. You get to place your modern story inside of an ancient tradition yourself. Another fun activity that you could do at home that I call Spot the Ancient Pattern would be where you look at clips or images from things such as Moana, The Lion King, Star Wars, and ask yourself, what is similar to the ancient myths that we discovered last week and the week before? Hopefully, you'll see it. It's just the same cycle continuing even today. So, a couple things to finale our series here. Stories don't disappear, they evolve. And every time you tell one, you are joining a chain that started thousands of years ago. So, before we end today, let's talk about that tree diagram. It's not just a diagram, it's a map of how storytelling works. Let's do a final review of what each part means. The roots represent why stories exist. At the very bottom of every story, ancient or modern, are the same needs: belonging, meaning, survival, identity, understanding the world and ourselves. Now, at the very bottom of every story, ancient or modern, are the same needs: belonging, meaning, survival, identity, understanding the world and ourselves. The roots never change. Now, the trunk represents the core patterns of story. This is where we place things like heroes and archetypes, the hero's journey, moral questions, transformation. The trunk is strong because it is a shared answer across cultures and time. The branches represent story forms across history. This is where we placed oral storytelling, myths, scrolls, manuscripts, printed books, novels, films, digital stories. The branches grow in different directions, but they all come from the same trunk. The leaves represent individual stories. Every movie, book, legend, fairy tale, game, or video you've ever watched is a leaf. Some fall, some return in new forms, but the tree keeps growing. So, on a final branch, you could write modern storytelling. Underneath it, add examples anywhere that they fit. You could put film as an example, animation, TV, video games, social media, fan fiction, YouTube, TikTok. Now, this is not a separate tree. It's all the same tree. It's still alive. Now, one of the most important things to understand before we close is that stories did not stop being myths. They did not stop being sacred. They did not stop carrying meaning. They only changed their clothes. The tools changed, the platforms changed, but the roots are the same. When you watch a movie, scroll a feed, read a book, or play a game, you're standing on the same ground early humans stood on when they told stories around a fire. You don't just study stories, you live inside of them. And now, a final way to look at our tree diagram. The tree was never just about story forms, it's just about humanity. Like we said, the roots represent the root questions every human has ever asked across every culture and every time. Now, these questions exist in every civilization, whether written down or not. That's why the roots are deep. The trunk represents the answer, not just a single system, a genre, or culture. The answer is our creator. The trunk is relationship with him. This is the central truth that holds up the entire tree upright. Without the trunk, the roots have no direction. Without the trunk, the branches collapse. The trunk is the steady, unchanging source that every story is reaching toward, whether it names him clearly or not. The branches represent the many journeys toward that answer, different cultures, different tools, different languages, different story types. Each branch is humanity's reaching upward, expressing longing, wrestling with meaning, searching for truth, and trying to understand relationship with God. Some branches are closer, some are reaching, some are broken or twisted, but they're all responding to the same roots and the same reaching towards the same trunk. The leaves are the individual stories. Every single story is a moment in that reach. Some stories get very close, some miss the mark, some reflect truth clearly, and some distort it, but none of them are random. Humanity has always been asking the same questions. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a good weekend.